Welcome again. Welcome again to the class. This is the Strategy Factory introductory class. Now, what does this mean? We have a workshop that holds. We have a workshop that will be holding on the 29th, like it does every last Friday of the month. However, we usually like to gift out the very first module of the class. So this is not some cooked up class that is designed to get people into a class. This is the very first module of the Strategy Factory. We do this because sometimes some people attend that module and say to themselves they'd like to be a part of the next class. But sometimes they just attend the module, get the value, and they move on, which is equally also fine with us, right? The most important thing is that at the end of this class, you're able to make some better decisions with regards to your business and the likes, right? The recorded version will be sent to you after this class. And perhaps you would also get the slides at some point after the class too. So thank you so much. My name is Ezekiel. I run a company called Lim Simple. It means life, investing, money, and business made simple. We have a business academy where we work with a number of businesses. These are some of the clients we've worked with. I don't want to go through all of them. These are some of them, not all of them. We haven't updated this in a while. And I was also admitted into the Forbes Coaches Council in 2022. Yeah, 2022. Right. But more important to this conversation, we've been fortunate enough to have worked with over 4,000 businesses and blessed enough to have seen more than 45 now, actually, of them exceed $1 billion a year in revenue, right? And typically, almost all of the clients that we've worked with to get to that level pretty much started out at this Strategy Factory. Some of them even right here at this free class that you are having to go through now. So the first question I always like to ask most people whenever I get an opportunity to speak is, what do you really want? And the reason why this question is important is because, when we're younger, we think about our lives based on what we want. But as we get older, we start to think about our lives based on what we think we can get. So if you picture it this way, you ask a young chap. I mean, I was walking down. I took a 1 hour walk. I like to do 1 hour walks every night when I was in Nigeria. I'm here for about 10 days. So I was taking a walk and I saw a Maserati, So if you ask a young child, what he wants to drive when he's old, he will say something like a Maserati, a Bugatti, something nice, right? And so you then advise the child, right? If you want to get that kind of car, you go to school, get a good job, work hard. And he does all of that. And then he's maybe 30, 35. He checks online. He wants to buy the Maserati or the Bugatti. It's $3 million. He doesn't understand until he converts it to Naira and is looking at a 4.5 billion Naira bill. So he gets a good idea that the purpose of a car is to move you from point A to point B. And so what we start to do at that level is that we start to downgrade our dream to what we think we can get. And oftentimes it's because we forget that oftentimes life doesn't add on itself. Life compounds. Now, how many of us here have ever heard the story of a wealthy man? And at some point in the story, how many of you have noticed that if you hear the story of a rich person, the story makes sense at some point, but there's usually a 2 to 3 year gap where it's a bit confusing. So it's like I'm drinking Gary, and then I bought a house in Ikoyi. Just that 3 year gap. That 3 year gap is called compounding. So that sometimes you keep building little by little, and then it gets to a particular point in time where their life gathers momentum, right? So what I like to do is to help first remind some of us, because some of us have gotten into business and we've forgotten why, remind you why you wanted to build a business in the first place. And then we'll spend some time talking about how we can get that. So we've seen a lot of people who say that they want, how many of us here would like financial freedom? If you like financial freedom, I want you to write freedom in the chat box. Because some people want financial freedom. That's why they start a business in the first place, right? How many of us would want financial freedom? Financial freedom. You don't want to suffer. Exactly. I mean, thanks. I mean, Akin says he wants, NO wants financial freedom. George, beautiful. So some people want to make a lot of money, and that's why they get out there and work harder. Some other people want to perhaps um, contribute to society, and giving is beautiful. In fact, giving is so good. It's almost a feeling that cannot be explained. You have to experience it for you to understand. Some people want to make a lot of money because they want peace of mind. They don't want to change the world. They just want to know that, like in our problem in the case of Nigeria, if dollar goes up to 2,000, they can buy it. If fuel goes up to 1,000, they can buy it. They just want to be sure. Some people want to make a lot of money because they want good health. And, you agree with me that good health is not cheap. Good health is freaking expensive. I mean, more so anywhere in the world. I mean, for you to eat, for you to be healthy, you need to, see good doctors, eat good food, some of which are not as cheap as they used to be, and some of which have never been cheap, right? Some want to make a lot of money because they want, good quality, and they want to have assets. So, for example, I'm somewhere, this building is owned by some organization or some person who I might never meet in my life, but, I'm having to pay money to. That's the power of assets. Some people want to make a lot of money because they want to have good quality education for their children. For example, put your kids. In fact, I always advocate put your children in good schools, not just because good schools maybe teach better, more importantly because in 20 years it might be more important that the kind of classmates your children had, that it might even be important whether they went to school or whether they were successful in school. I remember one day I was in Transcorp, and I was in a room where, in fact, we're in the ARIC office in Transcorp, trying to get a ticket back to Lagos. And then people were arguing, about how expensive Abuja schools are. And as they were arguing, one lady just blurted out and said, all these schools are so expensive. It's not the same way they're writing. I'm going to take my daughter to a school in Nnewi, And so usually, I don't always talk about what doesn't concern me, but they're about to send somebody to Nnewi that is not there to defend herself. So I just, got in, spoke to the lady, and, I just spoke out and I said, Madam, I'm really sorry for, I'm sure it's not my business, but please don't send the child to Nnewi. And no one was like, it's not the same way. I said, well, it might be the same way, but in 20 years, it might matter more to your daughter who a classmate was than it might even matter what she scored in the WAEC. That, in the future, our network, there are people today who have grown stupendously rich just off of the fact that they went to school with a certain person. And some other people want to make a lot of money because they want to retire in style, right? And so this one, I think, requires us to have some explanation, right? So imagine if, for example, you have a job that allows you to put, because when I talk to people that have jobs, they talk about the pension fund a lot. So if you have a job that allows you to put away, for example, 50,000 naira to your pension fund every single, say, month, that would be about 600,000 a year, right? Now, if you put that in a pension fund, and you get maybe surprisingly 10% guaranteed interest. Somebody says volume. Does that mean you cannot hear me? Just need to be sure. If you can hear me, please type yes, so that I know that it's not just him. Okay, great. So, Mr. Godwin, can you maybe increase your volume? Everybody else seems to be able to hear me. I know my voice is not that clear, because I have a frog in my voice, right? So you get, let's say, 10% guaranteed interest. You can save 600K every year. Now it's more like 2%, 2 to 4%, yeah. But let's say you get 10%. You get 20 years of being able to save this amount of money, and then you get something extra. It's called compounding interest. When you put these figures together, this person would end up in 20 years with a nest egg, a retirement savings of 32.2 million. How many of us would like the opportunity to have 32 million naira in your retirement account when you can no longer work as hard, right? If you would like it, write 32M. 32M. I mean, nobody's going to pass an opportunity to want that kind of money when they, I mean, especially when you get to a point in your life where you are not able to work as hard, and the likes. Except for one small problem. And thanks for responding. A lot of us want the money. Except for one small problem. Robert Kiyosaki says that there are three sides to every story. There's the side that you're told, there's the side you believe, and then there's the truth. And the truth here is that all things being equal, you would have 32 million, 32.2 million exactly. But the question that the pension fund is hoping you will not ask, which is the question I want to help you answer today, is what would 32 million naira be worth in 20 years? Right? Because what's happening is that they're selling us tomorrow on today's excitement. It is exciting today to have 32 million. How exciting would it be in 20 years? It might not be as exciting. So let me explain. Imagine, and to understand what it will be like, we have to go back, say, to the past. So you go back to a year like 1985. In 1985, if my dad had, say, 3,500, right, he could buy a brand new car. Of course, not a Maserati, but you buy a brand new car, a 505, a Beetle, something like that, right? And by the way, for those of us that are very young, 3,005 was not back pocket change. In fact, as at this 1985, the minimum wage of Nigeria was 200 naira per month. It means that the minimum wage worker in Nigeria make 2,400 naira every year, and so it was a lot of money, right? You wouldn't go and visit your uncle in 1985 and he gives you 3,500 for transport. It was not going to happen. So imagine that my dad is going to buy a car. His friend says, no, why don't you put that money in a savings plan or retirement plan? I mean, the car is going to spoil in next year. Anyways, so he decides to do that. He gets 10% guaranteed savings, interest rather. He does that for 20 years. He gets compounding interest. The same factor that produces that 32 million naira here. When he finally retires, saving that every year, he will have 224,600, which is a lot coming from 3.5. The problem is that he's going to get this money in 2005. 2005, 224,600. Would he buy me a brand new car? No. He won't buy me. He won't even buy me a useless car. Because that's why experts tell us that even though saving is a good habit, it's a very bad strategy. Because you're saving something that is losing value faster than it is gaining numbers. Inflation and all those things are eating at the saving. And that's why, especially for those of us in real estate, this is a very good sales pitch you can give to your friends or to your clients. It is better to save up for an investment than to save up as an investment. Save your money, buy a house, save your money, start a business, save your money, whatever it is, save towards a project, an investable project. But if the long-term plan is that I'm going to put some money in a savings plan, whatever, you're going to get into the future and realize that you worked so hard in a world that equally worked so hard against you. So now you decide that you want to build a big business. The first thing you want to do is to realize that you're an entrepreneur. And I say this because some people say things like, no, I'm not an entrepreneur. I work for somebody else. Well, an employee is an entrepreneur with one client. A business owner is an entrepreneur with many clients, right? In fact, I tell people if you're here and you work as an employee somewhere, you realize that you're an entrepreneur the day you are fired. The letter they give to you will have a lot of things written, but one of the things that it will have, written would be that we no longer require your services, and then it will dawn on you that the reason why you've been there all these years, it's not because you were liked, it's because your services were required. The day your services were no longer required, you get fired by your client or your employer, as we like to call it, right? So if you're going to be an entrepreneur or you're going to be an entrepreneur, you need to figure out what a business is. And because it's the strategy workshop, we always like to start the very first module with what is a business. So I'd like to take some feedback. So what is a business? Anybody? What is a business? By the way, your answer cannot be wrong, because if you've been in business for 3 seconds, you already have an opinion. Ultimately, I'm only sharing my own opinion. I do not know. In fact, there are probably some of us on this call that are more knowledgeable, than me in a lot of things, including the subject that I'm even teaching. So I'm not saying that my definition is the best. So I'd like to take, beautiful, George says, is a product or service, okay? So what do you do with that product or service, right? Anybody else? I'd like to take 2 more, and then I will share with you a definition that I found. I didn't come up with it. I'm not that smart. Anybody? Anybody? What is a business to you? What is a business? We're all business people. Okay. Olabanji said, to him, a business is electronic sales. So we can tell exactly what you do for a living. Electronic sales that is imported from the high sea. Anybody else? I'd like to take 1 more. What is a business? Good. Tony says it's creating value in exchange for money. Fantastic. So one of the best definitions I've found is from a book called Personal MBA. I recommend that you buy the book. I try to read the book every month or every other month, at worst case, once a quarter. And the author is called Josh Kaufman. Amazing guy. He gave us a 5-step process for what a business is. He says a business is a repeatable process. The Personal MBA is right here on the screen. It's right here on the screen. It's called the Personal MBA by Josh Kaufman. Especially if you've never been to an MBA before and you don't want to go there, like you don't see the need for it, everything that you will learn in an MBA is inside that book. Everything. I'm talking like everything. Every freaking thing you learn is right inside that book. Right? So Josh Kaufman said that a business is a repeatable process, and this is very important. Let's take Nelson first. Nelson says a business is a system that solves problems and gets compensation in return, often in monetary value. Good. He says a business, Josh Kaufman, by the way, says a business is a repeatable process that does these 5 things. Number 1, it creates and delivers something of value. Number 2, that other people want or need. Number 3, at a price they are willing to pay. Number 4, in a way that satisfies the customer's needs and expectation. And number 5, so that the business brings in enough profit to make it worthwhile for the owner to continue operation. This definition I consider as one of the best definitions I've ever seen. And I've personally not found a better definition of a business. So let's just look through. So the whole of this, over the next 27, 30 minutes, I'm going to try and see how we can just break down this definition. Because once you understand this definition at a much deeper level, it will maybe affect how you run your business. And in fact, for some of us, we might double down on the business that we're doing. Some of us might even shut down a business and move on to the next, right? So the first question, remember the first thing here is that a business creates and delivers something of value, right? So the first question is, this thing that your business is delivering, how valuable are your offers, right? Because we need to check that sometimes not every idea is a viable business. So how do we check? There are ways to ascertain whether the business is viable or not. About 7 ways, but I'll share 4 of them. The first is, this business that I'm doing, does it serve a huge expanding market, right? Is the size of the available market, or rather the size of the addressable market, or the size of the total market, is it expanding or is it shrinking, right? Because you can't build a business bigger than the economy and the market size that exists. You have to be careful. For example, maybe 10, 20 years ago, it was a beautiful business, in fact, a very profitable business to own a cyber cafe. Now, in Nigeria, and even in Nigeria, I mean, it's a very useless business now. Why? Because the market size for cyber cafe is shrinking because everybody can have access to internet on their phones by themselves, right? So once the market that is addressable is shrinking, you need to get out of that business. And how you can tell is to really, look at what the population is saying, right? So you want to get into a business when the market is at this level, is huge and expanding. Now, some people get into the business at this place here where it's already dying, and they get swept off of the business and they can't do much themselves, right? So there are industries that are already shutting down. There are industries that are closing down. There are industries that you should be getting out of, right? You are selling recharge card, move. Well, anything you're selling. And on the other hand, anything, and how you can tell is that you study the population of the people, right? For example, Nigeria has a very young population. So there are products that would work here that would not work anywhere else. In the UK here, they have an aging population. So you see things like care homes, you see things like, you see a lot of all those things, right? If you take care homes and you bring that concept to Nigeria, it might work, but most likely it would not work, both for strategy reasons, but I think more importantly for cultural reasons too, right? So you want to check that. The second thing is this business that I am doing. Exactly, George. In fact, I did training. I do trainings for NMPC, and the NMPC has already put in place a strategy right now to move into gas, right? So gas is where they're going to end up in, right? Because ultimately the world is not going to need as much petrol as in the next 20, 30 years as it does now. But gas, and lithium batteries will be the future. Olabanji says, introduce paying installments, but Nigeria economy did not support. Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. So the second is, can it be turned into a unique product? Why is this important? People must be able to move away from wanting your product category to wanting you. That's how you make money. You can't make a lot of money being like everybody else. People must say, oh, I want to move away from buying a phone to buying an iPhone. I want to move away from flying, an airline to flying BA. The moment there's a reason for somebody to come and seek you out specifically, then there's a reason for them to be able to pay you more because now there's something unique about you. So the question that you must always ask is, in my industry, in the business that I do, is there a point of difference? Is there a reason why somebody should work with me as opposed to everyone else? Once you can identify that, you're in business. If you cannot identify that, then you're in a very dangerous place. Because if you can't identify that, you only have to play the price game. And the price game kills everybody. If everybody is reducing their price, we're all going to die. Because, at some point, it'll get to a point where it's completely unsustainable. And, without things like government tax breaks and the likes, everyone's going to go out of business, right? The third thing is whether the idea is in its time. Now, why is this important? It's important because if you come into a market too early, you'll be saddled with the responsibility of educating the market. And once you have to educate the market, it's so expensive that most companies that engage in it don't make it. So for example, all of us here know Facebook, Instagram, and all of that. What we might not know, or might even have forgotten, those of us that are old enough to know, is High Five, MySpace. Most of us here know YouTube, but there was a company before YouTube called Netscape. Most of us here know Gmail, but there was a company before Gmail called AOL, Hotmail. All these companies spend a lot of money educating us about social networking or emails or video streaming or whatever it is that they educated us on, and ran out of money by the time the industry got the message. Remember, I mentioned earlier that, let me draw this diagram again, that what you want to do is that you want to get into the business when it's huge and expanding, not when it is at this level. But sometimes some people get into the business right at this level here. You see, between this place here and this place, what is done is education. And it's very, very dangerous too. So for example, MTN, Econet came in, they both did a lot of education. Econet didn't make it in Nigeria. MTN made it, but the reason why MTN made it was that MTN had collected, because the government knows how expensive education is. So anytime you have sort of like a pioneer license, or you prove to the government that you're pioneering a new industry, they allow you to go tax-free for 10 years. So all that money that MTN saved kept them alive. Even though they are not in trouble now, they just lost a lot of money on the Nigerian stock market. And lastly, does it give you leverage? Why? Every one of us start a business because we want to be successful, not just because of it. Most of us want to be successful and we want freedom. And sometimes the way you build your business or the business you get into is one that cannot afford you freedom. So you want to make a decision whether you want to move to that level, right? So once you figure that one out, then the next question, or the next factor that Josh Kaufman talked about is this: first, you must create and deliver something of value, and we've talked about that. Second, is that other people must want or need your product. And here we're talking about, how have you been able to create necessity in the minds of people? So for example, most people here, how many of you have noticed something? That the people who use iPhones, there's a sense in which they behave as if they've made it in life. Have you noticed? If you've noticed, type yes. Right? They just behave as if they've made it in life. How many of us have noticed and it annoys you? If you have not noticed, then you probably use an iPhone. See, George just says, I'm team iPhone. Don't worry, I'm in your team too. But you see that feeling, means Nokia C22. You say they are proud, say, I mean. So you see that feeling was engineered into the average iPhone user. And it was engineered on two levels. It was engineered from a marketing perspective, but it was also engineered from a design perspective. So let's talk about the marketing perspective. Have you noticed that if you watch a movie, any movie, American movie particularly, if you're watching a movie, the richest person in the movie or the good guy, like the actor in the movie, they're usually using iPhones. The bad guy doesn't use an iPhone. Apple has been trying to push a narrative. And the other thing that you find is that, let's take a Samsung phone, for example. You can have two people using a Samsung phone produced in the same year, and they don't feel like equals. Maybe because one of them is using the S20 something, the other one is using the A20 something, and then it's in the same year, but the excess segmentation makes it difficult for them to feel like they belong to the same group. But if you notice, and some of us might not have noticed, but if you look at the iPhone, any iPhone produced in any 2 to 3 year period looks the same. So if they gave 11 Pro 2 cameras, they'll do it for 12 Pro, 13 Pro. Then maybe when it gets to 14 or 15, they can then have 3 cameras and then run that way. Why? Because they wanted to create an exclusive club so two people, one of them is using an iPhone and maybe even is 2 years older than the previous one, they immediately connect, they immediately feel like they're equals right there. So the question now is, the product or the service that you're doing or that you're offering, is there a sense in which people feel as though they must be using your service for them to feel like they are a part of something special, right? The people who, use buy your electronics. Let me look at what most of us here do. People who buy electronics from you, right? People who buy buildings from you for our realtor. Is there a way you offer the product or service that makes it so unique that they have considered the way you do business, sort of gold standard? Or, is it just like everybody else, right? The third is at a price they are willing to pay. And here we're not talking about whether your product is cheap or expensive. What we're really talking about is whether you are talking to the right people. Because again, In business, nothing is expensive, nothing is cheap. The difference is who's buying, right? You know, I mean, there was a research done in I think it was here in London. So what a guy did was that he 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 rented for a month a very a nice shop on a high street, and then because he had a store in another side of town, he rented for a month a high shop, a shop on the high street, like all the street has all these high level designers, and took the same products in the store that he sold for like 50, 60 pounds, shoes and all that kind of stuff. The same label, nothing else, put them in the store, and he made them 2,000, 3,000 pounds, and people bought them. And as they were buying them, people were talking about, oh, the shoes are so exquisite. Nothing is, oftentimes nothing is expensive, nothing is cheap. The difference is who's buying. And so what I always tell business owners is you need to check your marketing and be sure that the marketing you are doing is it attracting the kind of people that you are hoping to attract, right? So Abraham Maslow came up with this thing. It's called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It means that if people exist at different levels of society based off of their disposable income. So think about it this way: if I'm hungry, for example, if I'm hungry and I want to eat, for example, if I have 500 naira, for example, I can eat. So even if I'm in VI, there's a small place somewhere you can go and eat in one mama put somewhere. If you have like 1,500 in the same VI, you can still eat, right? If you cut, into what's the name of that street with Zenith Bank, you go branch Chicken Republic, you refer your spirit there. If you have like 10K, you can still eat, right? Enter maybe Casper's and Gambini, some restaurants, decent restaurant, you would have a decent meal. If you have like 20 to 50K, you can still eat. If you have like 300 to 500K, you can still eat. Same one meal, right? In fact, the restaurant there is not so far from Ricotta. I had the opportunity to go there once with one of my staff. It was a meeting with a client, and when we're done eating, and I saw the bill. In fact, I was chatting with my wife that, babe, don't worry, we should come here next week. When I saw the bill, I told her that we will come. I'm just not sure when it will happen, right? Because I and my colleague had eaten 724,000, sorry, at the time. Thankfully, I wasn't paying. If not, I would have deducted part of the money from my staff salary, right? But the reality here is that the person who packages his food for this person here is not looking for this person here, right? That's the truth. So the question is that some of us our business, our marketing can find this type of person, but we are hoping that it finds this kind of person. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everybody needs to sell to rich people. You don't have to sell to a rich person to be successful. Volkswagen is one of the cheapest cars in the world, but they own Maserati, they own Bugatti, they own Lamborghini because they focused on who they're supposed to be focused on. Tata, Kekemara, for those of us in Lagos, many of us we know Kekemara. Kekemara, Tata, the country, the business, Tata are the ones that own Range Rover and they own Rolls Royce. And they made that money from selling Kekemara, right? So it's not about trying to sell to rich people. It's about being a strategic fit, your marketing being a strategic fit to the kind of people you're looking for, right? The kind of rooms you're going into, the kind of places they're hearing about you. You have to make sure that it's a fit, or else you're going to be very, very, it's going to be very unproductive if your marketing and your targeting does not match, right? The next is in a way that satisfies the customer's needs and expectation. And here we're really talking about what's your process. When people buy from you, and every time people are buying, it's always the first time, so you're not able to retain customers. It means that there's a problem in your system, right? And it happens like this. Most of us, we keep communicating with our clients, and the communication goes up until they pay. When they pay like this, they drop off the earth because we are looking for the new place where we're going to get money. And we forget that sometimes this client here, a happy client can bring you 7 people. So we must invest in our customers as we invest in our clients. Somebody in your organization must know the name of your customers, and your customers must know the name of somebody in your organization. There must be a communication strategy. There must be, every single, you must have a plan for how you want to engage your customers after they have bought from you, not just before they've bought from you, right? Somebody must be in charge to talk to them, to let them know, because the most vulnerable time, see, if a customer has been trying to call you 3-4 times and you miss the call and they have not bought from you, they usually would assume that you missed the call. If after they have paid you, they called you 4 times and you don't pick, they start to assume that you're avoiding them. So what it means is that when people have paid you, that's when you must, especially when they just pay, that's when you must be very careful as to how so many of us commit resources to sales. So we have all these people that call people before they buy, and we don't commit as much resources in terms of thought, in terms of manpower, to customer service or customer experience, such that when they buy, their experience is as enthusiastic as, our response to them is as enthusiastic as before they paid. So somebody bought something from you, he's calling you, you have to reach out, you have to be able to pick the person's call, and the likes, and do your best, right? So very, very important. And the last point here is so that the business brings in enough profit to make it worthwhile for the owners to continue operation. And the reality is that a business has to be profitable. Why? And profit is not about enjoyment, as it were. Profit is about survival. I attended a program in 2012 by Brian Tracy. Brian Tracy himself, he was the one speaking at the event. I can't remember most of what he said, really, but I remember one statement that stuck with me, and it stuck with me for life. In fact, the statement was so powerful. When I got to my office, I printed that statement out on a piece of paper, and I put it right in front of my chair. In fact, now I have it in a nicer portrait put in front. That's the only thing my eyes are looking at anytime I sit down in my office. And what he said is profits are the cost of the future. And what does it mean? The future of any business costs profits for 2 reasons. First is that you have to realize that wealth is not measured in numbers, it's measured in time. If, for example, we get into like a year 2020 situation all over again, and you can't make money, and let's say your business burn rate, the expense is like 10 million a month, and you only have 100 million in your account, in 10 months, you're in trouble. But also because the future of any business is easier when they are very profitable. Look at Microsoft, for example. Microsoft is shifting significantly away from being a software company, and all of the industries that they have used to grow big, they've had to buy up a company in that industry. They bought Activision for gaming, and so now Microsoft can participate in the gaming industry. And they bought 49% of OpenAI for AI, and they bought a couple of other smaller cloud computing companies to get into the cloud game, right? So it is important for your business to be profitable, not just because you are going to now buy a nice car or whatever. The reason why it is important is that the future of your company, the future of your business depends on the excess money it's generating today, so that it can buy something that can give it access to continue to live. Every industry. Yes, thank you, George. This is why Dangote still find money. Exactly. Right? Because no matter how much Dangote has, the reality is that the future growth is dependent on its ability. I mean, just think about it, right? To expand Dangote from right now is worth about, is it $18 billion now? He had to put some money to create a refinery, right? Otedola had to buy up Geregu Power to be able to, I mean, if it's not profitable, he can't buy that thing. Doesn't matter how. So that's why it's also important that when entrepreneurs, when business owners make money and make profits, it's critical that you realize that the essence of the profit is not to declare. The essence of the profit is to spend it in such a way that it would create perhaps greater profit or greater opportunities for profits in the future, right? So you want to reinvest as much as you possibly can so that you don't get into a fix in the future. But I want to do a quick activity, and we have 15 minutes to 7 o'clock and just about enough time. I want to do a quick activity. It'll take about 5-10 minutes, and it'll help you find out sort of how much money you spend. So I want to see if your business is even profitable where it is now. And then I want to ask you 2 questions and we'll call it a day. All right, if that's fine. So, but here's the thing. Most of us, this activity is going to be tough for us. So we might not finish it. So what I want you to do is that I need you to get a notepad, get yourself a notepad and a pen. And once you're done, I want you to write ready in the chat box. When I see ready from like 3 or 4 people, I would continue. Good. Nelson is ready. Who else is ready? Who else is ready? Eno is ready. George is ready. Who else? I'm waiting for 1 or 2 more people. Timitokwa is ready. Good. So now that you have your notepad, now the next slide, don't write anything. I would explain every single thing to you. I want to find out how much money you spend every month. And then I want to find out if your business can afford you. That's all we're trying to figure out. It's as simple as that, but it's very significant. So the first thing I want you to write, if I mention anything that you don't spend money on, don't bother yourself. It doesn't matter, right? So the first thing I want you to write is rent. Most of us here pay rent. I mean, for yourself personally, for most of us, your rent is annual. So let's say your rent is 2 million, right? But we want to find out what the monthly figure is. So you want to divide that by 12 and then write what the monthly figure is, right? Now, once you're done with that, right, I want you to write rent done in the chat room. So when I see rent done, I know that you're done with rent, right? Just write rent done in the chat room. So don't just write done, write rent done so that I know. If you live in your own house and you don't pay a mortgage for it, just write rent done and let's move on because you don't spend that. You're already done with that. Thanks, George. Thanks, Chibike. Who else? Who else is going to do this? I want 2 more people and I move on to the next one. Timitokwe, thank you. Who else? Okay. How do I pronounce this? M-H-I-Z. Miz, but there's no care there, so good. So the next is transportation. Most of us here have cars. So usually you sort of fuel your cars weekly if you have a car, right? So your weekly amount is set. Some of us fuel our car daily, or some of us don't have cars, you take the bus, so you have a daily budget. So whatever your daily budget is, multiply that by 30. So if it's like 1K a day, so multiply that by 30. Whatever your weekly budget is for your 4, multiply that by 4. That tells you what the monthly figure is. So write that down, right? And so when you're done with that, write TP done. So that tells me you're done with transportation, right? If I see TP done, I know you're done with transportation. So who's done? Who's done? Who's done? Who's done? 11 more minutes. Tebitokwe, thank you. Who else? Nokia C22, thank you. Oh, I'll say JMK. Chibike, you wrote done. So what is done? Is it TP that is done, or what is done? Or is it the beans that you put on fire that is finally done? Good. Next is utilities. So utilities are quite tricky. Most of us here have light bill. So you write light bill and whatever that is. Most of us live in gated environments. So we have like estate due or security bill or whatever it is. Most of us here have cable TV, high TV, low TV, whatever TV it is, Netflix, Prime, whatever it is. Most of us here fuel our gen because it's a utility, right? Most of us here buy gas. So whatever it is, write all these different components and whatever else you consider utility, write the amount it is, and then write it monthly so that you can then fill this up, right? And so you can write UT done. So UT done means you're up to date with this particular. So I want to see some UT dons now. Anybody done with utilities? Thank you, JMK. Chibike, thank you so much. Okay. So next is feeding. So feeding cost, this is not food stuff in your house. And this only applies to some of us, not all of us. Some of us that you don't work from home. So there's somewhere you work, somewhere you live. So there's sort of like a small budget for, just buying food stuff every day. There are about 26 working days in a month. So whatever that amount is, once you're done, I want you to write FC done. So but the next one is the one that applies to most of us, groceries. So groceries is maybe one of the largest budgets in your household, food stuff, toiletries, the entire full bouquet of things that you buy in the house every month. So whatever that amount is, which oftentimes is usually quite large, is sort of like the second or third largest budget, depending on how large a family you have. So you want to write that down also and write GC done. So we're talking about toiletries, food stuff, toiletries. I mean, everything that you put in your house. So if you're done with FC and GC, just write FC, GC done so that I know. And then we can move on to the next one. We have 10 more minutes. Actually, we have 8 plus 5, 13 more minutes. Good. Thank you. Good. Thank you. So next is school fees. Now, if you're married and you have children and they're not yet in university, you pay school fees 3 times a year. So there's term 1, there's term 2, there's term 3. Now, once you add all this, it will give you what the yearly total is. Divide that total by 12, that will tell you what the monthly figure is, right? So you write SF done. Now, and of course, you do this for each of your children. There's no buy one, get one free school. If you find that school, I'm interested. Because, right? And it has to be a good school too, right? So you want to write school fees. If you don't have children, that's okay. If your kids are out of school, that's okay. But of course, you should also have a training budget. I have a training budget personally, that I'm in the UK for a meeting now. But when I get back to Nigeria, I'm going to Qatar for a training that I paid for. So I budget for that at the beginning of the year. I know I'm going to be going for that training, and then there's another one I'm supposed to go for much later in the year also. So personal expense. What is personal expense? How much you spend on yourself? Toiletry, not toiletry, haircuts. Some of us buy gadget every now and then. Whatever it is, write PE done. For most entrepreneurs and most adults, right, you don't really spend so much on yourself, especially when you have children. I remember when I was getting married, one of my friends that has been married for about 6 years then, he told me that I should go and buy jeans, like 4 jeans. I said, why? He said, because once you marry, you're going to wear these 4 jeans for the next 6 years. You're not going to buy new clothes because all your money is going to go to your children. and your wife. The next is childcare expense. So what's childcare expense? Is anything that you expend money on your child that is not school fees, like coding lesson, football lesson, all those kind of things, extracurricular things that you do for your kids, those things are, so you get the annual figure and then you divide that by 12. Sometimes the monthly figure if you pay for it monthly. And then I want you to write CC done. So that tells me you're done with this. Who's still with me? I know some of us have stopped because you now have heart attack already, but just keep going. Next is communication. Communication is airtime and data, right? Airtime and data you spend in a month. So we have CM done. So that tells me you're done with communication. I need to run fast. Next is giving. How much do a lot of us sort of feel like our giving is random, but in reality, it's not. There's sort of like a system to how we give. We give to God, we give to our family members, we give to friends, we give urgent 2K to some of our friends like that. We all know, and we sort of, if you don't have a budget, it's important that you have a budget anyways. So we have GV done, if you're done with giving. And then lastly is other expenses. Other expenses, anything I have not mentioned, like maybe you travel, once or twice a year, maybe you travel with your family, all of that. So once you're done with other expense, or you have a driver or a house help or whatever else. Once you're done with that, I want you to write all done. If you're done with everything, I have 2 questions for you and we'll call it a day. Good. So once you're done, I want you to add every single thing together. So what you should be looking at essentially should be a rough sketch of what you spend every month. So I have 2 questions to ask you for that. How many of us have, if you add it all up, if it's surprising to you, I want you to put an emoji that lets us know if it's surprising to you. Because it might be, some of us might not have done this before. So I'll give you 1 more minute to be able to, because we have 8 minutes left. So have we done, who's done calculating? Who's done calculating? You don't have to tell us so. Don't tell us so. It's personal information. We just wanted to know if that's the kind of money that you expected. I just wanted to know how shocking you were, if you were. Okay, good. So here's the thing, right? I have 2 questions for you guys. So the first question is, you run a business, and assuming your business is your only source of income, can your business pay you that amount of money that you wrote like that every month? Judge say your heart is beating fast. You should not be beating faster. All right. How many of us can safely say your business can pay that amount of money? Assuming your business is your only source of income. Right? Not, I mean, a lot of us. Now, imagine that is even the case. But the real question I want us to think about is, how big does your business need to get to be able to pay you? You get it. Now, the reason why a lot of us don't know this is because they don't show up at the same time. There are some of them that show up annually, some of them show up daily, some of them show up monthly. So we sort of arrange ourselves and get it done. But if you take a holistic look at it, you would realize that, a lot of us need to work a little harder. So how big does your business need to get for you to be able to pay 20 people, assuming you had 20 people or you had a lot of people working for you? Can you build your business big enough so that 20 of them, right, 20 people in your organization are earning the kind of money that you just wrote down now, right? Because when you when you when you create a business, right, and you have employees, even if it's just one, the least they want is what they see you have, right? And you have to build a business that can represent their dreams, or you run the risk of losing them. If you don't want to build a big business, you can't keep good people, because good people are meant for bigger things. And if you're not going to build a big business, they're not going to stay. How many of us would love a situation where you can build a big business and you can pay people the kind of money you just wrote down? If you want to be in that situation, type yes. Let me see how many of us are ready. You want to be able to build a big business. Great, Chibike. Thank you. Who else? George, thank you. Who else? Eunice, oh, great. Thank you. So now, if you are in that category, then you are the person that we created the Strategy Factory workshop for. Not everybody can make it there, but for those people, they're the ones that we expect, right? We have a class that is about 10 modules, 35 different topics. And the goal is to be able to get you to understand strategy, shift your business to the next level, and build a bigger business, right? And of course, the sessions are also fun. So they're quite fun sessions also, right? So this is sort of like a picture from our last class. No, this is not the last class. This is from January's class, by the way. January's class, by the way. So for those of us that want to make it to the class, it's on the 29th of March. It's on Friday, 29th of March. It's 180,000 naira. By the way, it's 180,000 naira now because Ecotel has tripled their cost, and we might be taking the price up next month. Unfortunately, so we need to. So how many of us would like to make it to this class? How many of us would like to make it to this class? If you'd like to make it to this class, I want you to write, I will. Because once you write, I will, somebody on my team is going to chat you up, get your phone number, and then try and see how. Great. Thank you so much, sir. So again, when you pay and you join the class, you get all these privileges. You get to be in class. You get added into the alumni. The alumni is a very powerful network. We help facilitate not just knowledge, continuous knowledge, but we also help facilitate business. We've seen about 5 billion naira transacted within our alumni, which is amazing, right? So please, once you say I will, Bola is going to chat you up, get your number, and then take things off from there. Bola, so please let me get the numbers first. There are those that can't make it. There are some people that have joined this meeting. There's some people that have flown in from other countries, but some people have joined virtually from London, from the UK, from Dubai and the likes. They also get all of these privileges also. So if you're ready, this is a good time. By the way, if Bisola, Bola, please let me chat them up individually so that they can drop their contact with you. Some people are not comfortable dropping their contact publicly. So I need you to chat them up individually in the chat box now and just get their contact directly. Yeah, just Bola would chat you up. Bola, please get their contact. Or alternatively, if you are interested in joining the class, I need you to send a text message to Bola now. Send a text message. Those of us that have written, I will, do me a favor, send a text message to Bola, write the same I will in the text message or WhatsApp message, and then just come back here and write sent so that I know you've sent the message. Right? Okay. So having said that, anybody got any questions for me? I'd like to take your questions. Anybody got any questions for me while we wait for those people to send their messages? Once you send the message to Bola, just type send that way. Let me see. Oh, thank you, Oluyemi, sir. So if you have any questions for me, please. If you're in a quiet place, you can unmute yourself. If you don't have any questions for me, then we can call it a day. Thank you so much. Take a snapshot of this page, and then we will talk much later. And for those of us that I would see in class, looking forward to seeing you. Have a fantastic evening. By the way, this class is recorded, so I'm also going to send the link to the recorded class. Yes. If you are interested, please send a text to this number. Somebody says interested. What's his name? Bolaji says interested. Send a text message to this number and we'll take it up from there, right? Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic day. Bye-bye, everyone.